Good morning and welcome to the OBX Wave Report for December the 16th, 2022. I am your host and wave reporter for the Outer Banks, Robert Scribbler. And for today, we are going to provide for you a analysis of all things waves and weather conditions for the Outer Banks to try to help you as you analyze the surf conditions and pick your spots for the day. And for today, at present, across the US and the Atlantic, we are seeing a march of various storm systems as we would expect for this time of year. And this is a satellite from yesterday from the NASA Worldview. And you can see a ocean system just off of the US Northeast and south of Newfoundland, another oceanic system just off of Spain, and a third system across the central US, while a fourth system, a very disorganized system, lurks off the US West Coast. Advancing to a more real-time satellite imagery, this one in the infrared, we see the storm system in the central and northern tier of the US swirling over the Great Lakes as it brings in cooler air and brisk conditions for the Outer Banks. Very clear conditions as the sunlight streams on down with strong westerly winds. Far offshore, you can see a coastal low in the central Atlantic. Central Atlantic lately has been producing a lot of strong systems, which have generated a strong base swell for the North Atlantic and have generated various big wave events for different regions of the North Atlantic, ranging from Portugal to the Baltic to England and Ireland, which I know are not typically surf spots. And then recently for the Outer Banks, we experienced a week of rather stormy ocean conditions where wave heights range anywhere from around 4 to 16 feet in some locations. So very stormy conditions over the past week. This at present for the Outer Banks, conditions are calming a bit. Wave heights have come down. Still brisk out there. We've still got some rideable surf if you're willing to strap on your cold weather gear and brave the elements for some winter-ish surf sessions. But it's not anywhere near as rough as it was yesterday, or even and particularly over the past few days. For the longer term, we're going to watch this influx of moisture over the southern tier of the US and northern Mexico and its interaction with colder air, as well as moisture streaming off the Gulf of Mexico, as in the 6 to 7 day time frame, we have the potential for these combined influences to produce a trough over the southern US, which transitions into a coastal low somewhere off the US East Coast. This is a longer term forecast, so its accuracy is not as high, but it's something that we as wave watchers will want to keep an eye on, because if we do get a coastal low here, particularly in the strength that is predicted, then we are going to see northeast winds, easterly winds, and higher surf conditions over the period of time for that coastal low. And it could also mean some beach erosion and impacts to the Outer Banks shorelines from an impact perspective. So something to keep an eye on for the longer term. Drilling down to the more local conditions, I'm just going to show you this wave forecast provided by magicseaweed.com. You may want to check out Magic Seaweed. It's a fantastic source for wave conditions across the Outer Banks and across the world itself. But for Jeanette's Pier, which is our primary location for reporting, wave heights, according to the model information provided by Magic Seaweed in this nice meta-analysis and graphical representation are expected to range from 2 to 5 feet over the next 7 days, with waves in the 3 to 5 foot range over the next 2 days, tapering off through the middle of next week, and then starting to pump up again by Thursday, perhaps, as the models take into account the potential formation of a coastal low and the return to stronger easterly winds. So just a snapshot of the longer term model conditions for a specific point on the Outer Banks, but this point is a good allegory, a good reference for east-facing beaches for the Outer Banks. Now, looking at our locational reports for the day, I am going to start with Jeanette's Pier as I typically do. And let's go ahead and zoom in on the satellite picture here as we go to Jeanette's Pier. At present, the wave heights at Jeanette's Pier are in the range of 3 to 5 feet. I'm sorry, 3 to 4 feet, with the wave period at 15 seconds for the primary swell and 7 seconds for the secondary swell. Winds are just north of due west at 22 miles per hour. So this is kind of a westerly wind with a slight northern component, and it's blowing offshore. So strong offshore winds, probably hollowing out those waves there over Jeanette's Pier. The air temperature is 48 degrees Fahrenheit, so cool and very brisk with those strong winds blowing offshore. And the ocean water temperature is 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Given those cold conditions, you probably want to make sure you've got your cold weather gear fully accounted for if you do go out and brave the surf conditions at Jeanette's Pier today. The weather forecast for today is for sunny and breezy conditions to continue, with an expected high of 53 degrees Fahrenheit. So cool today, and over the next few days, unfortunately, temperatures are going to drop even more according to our weather forecast. So moving on south, down past Body Island, past the Lighthouse, past Oregon Inlet, and down to Esterns, which is this nice beach here off the Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge. The wave heights there are 2 to 4 feet today, with a wave period of 14 seconds for the primary swell and 8 seconds for the secondary swell. Winds are also out of the west, this one in a west-northwesterly angle at 21 miles per hour. So these are also offshore winds at Esterns. The air temperature is slightly warmer as we would expect with that more southerly position. And so the air temperature is 50 degrees Fahrenheit and the ocean water temperature is 61 still. At Esterns, we've got ocean temperatures remaining in the 60s. Weather conditions and the forecast for the day is that breezy and sunny conditions will remain as we get the influence behind that frontal system which pushed through yesterday. And the expected high temperature for today at Esterns is in the range of 55 degrees Fahrenheit. For our third location for today, I'm going to go all the way down the island strand here past Pea Island Beach, Rodanthe Pier, past Avon. We're going to take the right turn on Route 12 down to Frisco to get you a observation from a south-facing beach. Over the past day, we had strong southerly winds, and this did generate a swell that's still in effect for Frisco and the south-facing beaches on Hatteras Island and Ocracoke. But with strong westerly winds coming in, that swell is getting chopped up. So conditions over the course of the day are likely to deteriorate. But at present, we have 3 to 5 foot wave heights at Frisco, with the primary swell at 8 seconds and the secondary swell at 9 seconds. Winds are 20 miles per hour out of the west-northwest, and that is blowing offshore. Air temperature at Frisco is 50 degrees Fahrenheit, so very cool and brisk down there. Ocean water temperatures are maintaining at 67 degrees Fahrenheit, so closer to 70 degrees Fahrenheit with that water temperature there. So considerably warmer, but with those strong winds out of the west and the air temperatures ranging in the lower 50s, it's still going to be pretty cold. So you're going to want to pay attention to your cold weather protection. Weather conditions for Frisco are breezy, sunny, and an expected high today of 56 degrees Fahrenheit. So overall calmer conditions across the Outer Banks compared to recent days where we had either very large oceanic swells driven by a central Atlantic storm with rather stormy or just edging on stormy local conditions, combining to create a pretty gnarly surf feature for the last week or so along the Outer Banks. Now, conditions are calming a bit, and we presently have waves ranging across the Outer Banks, mostly in the 2 to 5 foot range, with many beaches seeing 3 to 5 foot surf. So waves have come down a bit, still rideable if you want to get out there and brave those cooler weather conditions. So what are we looking at in the larger picture for wave conditions for the North Atlantic? At present, we have yet another strong mid-ocean storm system, which is generating very large waves in the mid-ocean environment up to 30 feet for the significant wave heights. And the significant wave heights are the top 30% of waves. And sometimes you'll get a wave in that range that's double the significant wave height. So 30-foot waves with the occasional potential for up to a 60-foot wave here in these large storms. And you can look at the spread of this storm. It's yet another very broad system, and we've just been seeing these things form again and again and again in the Central Atlantic, and this is just kind of par for the course right now for this time of year. And it seems that maybe these storms are getting some extra fuel due to the warmer ocean conditions across the North Atlantic, providing more evaporative lift, and also due to a high temperature gradient between the north and south, which is, of course, pretty typical for this time of year, although we're getting some interesting waves in the jet stream that help to put warm air right next to cold air in let's see, like a latitudinal fashion. So we do have a lot of storm fuel out here in the North Atlantic, both due to traditional weather conditions and also climate change related weather conditions. And so overall right now we have pretty large waves across the North Atlantic. I'm going to zoom in on some more local spots to just give you guys an idea of what the swells look like just offshore. So in the range of about 6 feet just offshore of Jeanette's Pier, in the range of also about 6 feet just near Hatteras Light Station, and then off Ocracoke with those, you can see those swells coming in from the south there. Let's see if we can get close to shore here. And yeah, in the range of 4 to 5 feet just off Ocracoke. It's worth noting that offshore swells tend to be a bit higher, and there's no guarantee that these swells will line up on the coastline, but it is informative to look at these wave maps to determine what the swells are looking like. Getting in closer to Florida, just to provide you guys with some perspective, just off the north central coast of Florida, wave heights are in the range of about 3 to 4 feet. So coming down a bit there as well. And then for another select location on the Atlantic Basin, I'm just going to zoom in to just off the Portugal coast here, where we see wave heights in the range of about 7 feet. And again, there's no guarantee that these waves will line up on shore, but it does give you an idea about the offshore environment. And the offshore environment for the North Atlantic is still pretty stormy, particularly as you get out into the ocean. You see significant wave heights ranging even rather far from the storm in the range of 10 to 16 feet. So still a very rough and stormy North Atlantic. I did mention the long range forecast, and I want to look at the march of low pressure systems across the Atlantic. This model provided by Tropical Tidbits is a good resource that I've often used for just getting an idea what the forecast looks like. And here for today, we see our present mid-ocean storm in the range of 979 millibars. Nothing to shake a stick at, but nothing too crazy. We've got a little low off the US northeast coast in the range of 999 millibars, and another 994 millibar system up here in the upper central US near the Great Lakes. And I'm going to go ahead and let this model run for you guys so we can show you the march of storms. This low pressure system dances around off of Western Europe for a while as we get another low pressure system forming in the central Atlantic, nothing too crazy. And let's go ahead and stop this thing here and roll it back because I want to talk about this little bad boy here, just off the US East Coast. So remember that stream of moisture I was talking about back off the US West Coast streaming into Mexico and the southwestern US? Well, by a late Wednesday of next week, that stream of moisture and instability is draped across the Gulf of Mexico, portions of the southeastern US, and portions of the Bahamas. And by that time, we see a low pressure system developing according to this model in the Bahamas. If we advance the model one frame, we start to see energy transfer from the weak low pressure system in the Bahamas to a low pressure system just south of North Carolina. And then this low begins to get more organized as it tracks on to the east a bit and then continues to strengthen just offshore in a classic nor'easter. This is not an extraordinarily powerful low at this time in the 1007 millibar range. Continues to track offshore. Looks like it's just going to head on out, but then watch what happens. It recurves back toward the US Northeast coast and strengthens, providing a broad influence across the US northeastern coastline, the entire mid-Atlantic, and the Outer Banks. And just looking at the way these millibar lines are tightened, it does also look like that there is a second low pressure system that tends to reform here just off the Outer Banks. Advance this one more frame and we see this low pressure system, which is not indicated as a low on the map, but you can see it as the isobars swirl around here. So we do have basically a double barrel low pressure system off the US East Coast. And this is a classic kind of nor'easter formation. And then boom, the energy transfers back to the second low pressure system off what is the Delmarva region in once again a classic kind of nor'easter formation. And this one now at 973 millibars, which is a pretty significant system. And then this thing deepens as it tracks on to the north through Saturday, slamming into southeastern Canada, and then recurves back into Canada as a 962 millibar low, which is a very strong storm system. So this system is something we need to keep an eye on. It's we're still in the long range forecast, but given the way this thing is lining up, it could be a very significant weather event for the US East Coast, for the US Maritimes off the US East Coast, and for Canada and the Canadian Maritimes as well. And for us surfers, this could also be a powerful wave generator. The way the storm is forming is in a classic nor'easter fashion. So we do want to keep an eye on it, and the models indicate a potential for a rather strong system. Right now in the range of the 960 to 970 millibar range. And these systems in that range can, cause significant impacts for the US East Coast and for the Outer Banks. So we're going to keep a weather eye to this particular system, as this is the next thing down the pipe that has the potential to affect wave conditions and weather conditions for the Outer Banks. So thank you for joining me once again for the OBX Wave Report, where we discuss all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And please remember to do everything you can to help save our beautiful shores from the impacts of human-caused climate change, primarily driven by fossil fuel burning.